Billy Corgan fut sans doute avec Kurt Cobain la figure la plus marquante du rock américain des années 90. À la tête des Smashing Pumpkins, il décorait ses distorsions de mélodies puisées dans la new wave britannique. Son premier album solo, The Future Embrace, baigne plus encore dans les sons des années 80.
Well, unfortunately, the bands that I was in were so chaotic in terms of the personal relationships, in terms of the drug problems. I don't miss that at all. But I always felt that the Pumpkins was one of the most important bands of the 90s. The album The Future Embrace, like all the albums I've done, always represent where I am in my life. And at this point in my life, I've had sort of a spiritual awakening. I set a bunch of goals when I was a young man that I sort of accomplished all of those. So this is about accomplishing new goals, primarily artistic. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago in the 70s and the 80s, there wasn't no access to alternative culture. So the idea of 17 years old feeling alienated and isolated and discovering Joy Division and The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen, these bands that represented the way that I felt, it was this wonderful moment. Having Robert Smith work on the album is a great honor because he's a good friend of mine. I had a band when I was 18 years old that was heavily influenced by The Cure. I think Generation X, as it's commonly known, is a difficult generation because we grew up with parents that grew up in the shadow of World War II. They came from the old values, but then they also went through the 60s, racial tensions, sexual revolution, drugs. And so we were the byproducts of this very messed up generation, which was the baby boomers. So I think Generation X artistically, particularly musically, was sort of living out these demons. In some cases, the demons unfortunately overtook the people who were living them out.
À 75 ans, Ahmad Jamal est l'un des derniers héros du jazz classique. Mais pour le fils spirituel d'Harold Garner, admiré par Miles Davis, toujours pas question de boîte à rythme, ni sur son album After Farge, ni sur la scène du Châtelet.
I don't use them, I don't intend to use them. I did work with the digital piano for a while, but that's because they didn't deliver my Steinway. You have some great players playing the digital piano or the electronic instrument. Joe Zawinul, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, but they also play the acoustical piano very well too. Jazz, I call it American classical music. I'm not paranoid about being called a jazz musician, but I myself am not a jazz musician. I've learned the art of being omnidimensional. So you have to know the European body of work. You have to know the American body of work. In other words, Dave Brubeck, George Shearing, Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett, myself, McCoy Tyner. We know Mozart. We know Duke Ellington. We know Count Basie. We know Beethoven, or inventions by Bach. There's only two art forms that developed in the United States. That is American Indian art, which is still pushed in the background, and this thing we call jazz. I have realized that the smattering of culture that we have in the United States, American classical music helped put it there. Example is Around Midnight, Thelonious Monk. Hoagy Carmichael's Stardust, Lush Life by Billy Strayhorn. They're still here. The things that won't be here are the things that are here today and gone tomorrow. Those are fads. Common sense compels you, induces you to throw it away.
Pop éphémère ou groupe majeur, ça cartonne en tout cas pour les Anglais de Coldplay. Près de 20 millions d'albums vendus, un Olympia complet en quelques minutes en attendant Bercy à l'automne. Leur style, une version soft et efficace de U2 et Radiohead, comme en témoigne leur nouvel album X and Y. Rencontre avec Chris Martin, chanteur angélique, fiancé fantasmé et gendre idéal.
In order to make records, you have to be in the business of music. But we try and think about it as little as possible, and we just concentrate on trying to make the best songs. Like Will says, everything that happens to us in our lives goes into our music. And maybe being a big band affects our music different to how being in a small band would be. But we don't try and contrive the music at any point. Music is the one way that we have of making sense of life. So interesting, full of surprises, and it's made even better by having a soundtrack. So we write music to make our own soundtrack. We sing about the things that everybody goes through, relationships and love and loss.
All you ever wanted was love, but you never looked hard enough. It's never gonna give itself up.
The political side of it tends to come out more in interviews where we talk about fair trade. This is the thing I have on my hand, this equals sign. It's the idea that we can talk about something that we really care about. We love traveling around and we love moving and we love meeting all different people and going to these places that we'd never go if we weren't in the band. You know, we have an incredibly privileged life and we just want to make the most of it and do the best stuff that we possibly can.